If you're making a high income in your business but don't have a lot of profit to show for it, how can you fix it? These are example numbers from a real business that is a service-based business, B2C, and they are positioned as a luxury service provider. When I look at these financials, the first thing I notice is that cost of sales is under 50%. It's actually 47% of revenue. Any business that I've seen with a gross profit margin of 50% or less struggles with cash flow, because after you pay for team and any product cost, you're just not going to be left with a whole lot to cover overhead expenses and owner pay. The other thing that I noticed is that the profit margin before owner pay is about 10% of revenue. My target for a healthy business, especially if the owner is working in the business doing some of the work, my target would be at least 30 to 50% of revenue. If I was advising this business owner, I would try to get them to work toward this target number as a next step. So the first thing I changed is I cut back on labor and product costs as a percentage of revenue. Their labor costs, when I looked at benchmarks, was pretty high, and it seemed like they're not using their team to their full utilization. So they're paying them for more work than they're actually using for client work. And product cost was pretty high at 30% of revenue, which tells me that they're likely either over ordering product or they're underpricing their projects. This is going to be the biggest bang for their buck. So if they're able to scale back on labor and product cost as a percentage of revenue, their gross margin increases by $7,000 to 60% on a monthly basis. I also scaled OpEx back to 30% of revenue, which is about $3,500, which is a 37% reduction in expenses. When I dug into the detail of OpEx, their biggest expenses were rent, insurance, and team costs. So I'd be looking at where we were underutilizing those expenses so we can cut back and save some money. This gets us to a 30% profit margin, leaving the owner enough to double their take-home pay and take home six figures, which leaves a nice chunk of profit left over to cover taxes, savings, investments, and debt payments.